And here we go. Over to you, Russell.
Great, thank you very much. First, I just want to give you a bit of a warning. I'm calling in rurally today and my internet connection is somewhat sensitive. So if you lose me, Christiane will follow through with what I have to present to you. Thank you for your patience. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. I'm speaking on the unceded territory of the Sishaten-Hupecheset First Nations, but we are conducting this meeting from the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nations. And Comox has been a critical partner for us in finding a path forward on sewage conveyance, and we're very proud of our relationship with them. We will be working closely with Comox First Nation to protect their archaeologically sensitive areas throughout this project. For those of you who have attended either of the sessions we held in November or March of this year, thank you for staying involved. I would also like to acknowledge your area director for Area B, Director Harsina Hamir, who is likely on this call tonight, but takes this and your interests to heart and is there to represent you with respect to your needs. For those who are joining us for the first time, we've hosted these sessions with residents in Area B and Lazo area as a way to keep the community informed about parts of the sewer planning process that will have a unique impact to this area and which we know will raise questions from you. We're committed to keeping you informed and creating the space to address questions and concerns that are raised regularly. In early March, we talked to you about the selection of the conveyance route for a new sewer force main and provided an overview of our groundwater monitoring program. Today, we're back to share an update with you on the planning and design process. Today, we're back to share an update with you on the planning and design process, including more information to respond to your questions about safety considerations for the tunneled pipe. Our team will help speak more about leak detection, environmental protection measures, and provide some examples of similar work that has been completed in other jurisdictions. The slide that we show you talks about the process to date. Following public consultation in the fall and extensive technical analysis as part of the liquid waste management planning process, the Sewage Commission approved a single phase of construction with tunneling through Comox and Lazo Hills as a preferred route early this year. We will review a map of the specifics on that in a moment. It is residents of Courtenay and Comox that are served by the sewage system, and as such, they will be responsible for the cost, which is estimated to be a total of $73 million, with approximately $50 million being borrowed. And it is to approve the borrowing of that $50 million that we're proceeding to an alternate approval process, as approximately $150 per year per household for 30 years will be what will be required to pay for this project. The alternate approval process takes place next month, and if you have questions today about that, we'll be sure to answer them. The implementation strategy will have the project complete by 2024. And we will continue to engage with you throughout this process. I thank you very much for your time today. Please ensure that we get your questions and have answers for them. The advantage of these Zoom workshops is we record them, you hear everybody's questions and answers, but we also have a record. So if you have neighbors that are interested in it, it will be available from our website. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Chris LaRose.
Great, yeah, thanks Russell. And thanks for participating today, everyone. I've prepared a relatively brief presentation to update you on the project. Not a lot of new information as we're currently procuring our engineering team for the bulk of the project and in the midst of making that transition from planning to executing the project. So our new engineers will be in place by late June, and we'll have a busy summer diving into some key assessments, including finalizing the horizontal directional drilled pipe alignment, which is directly relevant to residents in this area. So first, a very brief update on the selected conveyance solution. So as Russell mentioned, on February 23rd, just before the last virtual open house for the Lazo area, which was on March 5th, the Commission approved the conveyance solution that's shown on your screen now. So some of you will be familiar with this map. So just I'll walk through it very briefly. So the conveyance solution selected by the Commission on February 23rd includes an entirely new conveyance route from our major pump stations to the treatment plant. So starting at the left at the Courtney Pump Station, the Courtney Pump Station itself will likely be replaced, although that is one of the assessments that will be undertaken by our engineers this summer, just to confirm that replacement is the right path rather than a major upgrade. So moving from there, it'll be a completely new line installed via cut and cover or trenching along Comox Road, commonly referred to as Dyke Road, and then through the KFN IR1, starting up the Comox Hill, and then roughly right at the boundary of the town of Comox and the KFN, the first tunneled section will start, and that's shown as that kind of vague kind of orange area, just given the uncertainty of exactly what alignment will be followed. So it'll go from the boundary of KFN and the town under the hill, through the hill to the eastern boundary of the St. Joe's parking lot, and then following Comox, and then cutting through the town via trench or cut and cover. Actually, we've now shifted that alignment to, we're in the process of assessing Comox Avenue versus Beaufort, and then down Ellis, along Beaufort Avenue, up Stewart, along Balmoral to Torrance, where the next and much larger section of tunneling will occur. So that'll be from the intersection of roughly the intersection of Lazo and Torrance, and then cutting through the Lazo Hill, either through a single tunnel or two tunnel option. So the two tunnel one was explored in detail with the public last year, but we are currently assessing a more direct alternate, which would go directly to the treatment plant. And then finally, the tie-in at the treatment plant. And so partway along the way, we're also looking at a major upgrade to the Jane Place pump station, which is just east of the Marina Park in Comox, and an upgrade to the Comox First Nation pump station. Now, shown at the bottom of the screen is a graph which shows the alignment from the side, highlighting the two heights of land, and just I guess this just illustrates why tunneling was selected as such a key part of this approach or the solution. Of the two heights of land, the Lazo Hill is significantly higher at about 65 meters. And so with the use of the optimal tunneling through the two heights of land, we're able to keep the maximum kind of head or elevation of that pumping system to a minimum, thereby significantly decreasing the initial capital costs, life cycle costs, and the life cycle risks. Because pumping wastewater up and over that significant height of land comes along with some significant operational risks as well. So next slide, please. Yeah, so following up on that last slide, here are a couple photos of the conventional trenching process that will be used for the cut and cover sections along Dyke Road and through the town of Comox. So shown on the top, and then on the bottom, an entry pit for the horizontal directional drilling technology that will be used through the two heights of land. So for trenching, this is the more conventional approach. It involves digging a trench, putting bedding material down, laying the pipe in, compacting bedding material around, and then backfilling. Given the size of the pipe, which is just under a meter in diameter, it translates to a pretty big hole, and so shoring is required just given the depth. Either that or a much larger excavation to provide the angled or sloped sides to mitigate the risk to workers. So that's the point of the shoring. Anything over a 4-foot depth is required to protect. Shoring is required to protect workers, either that or wide slopes to the sidewalls to avoid that collapse risk. So a pretty disruptive process, just given the scale of this pipe and the excavation. So the HDD, on the other hand, focuses the kind of the visible impacts on either end of the tunnel. And so what's shown in this photo is an entry pit location where the drill rig is set up, and not shown here, there would be a number of kind of container-based support systems to help support that drilling operation. So it takes up a fairly large footprint. And then that drill rig effectively drills a pilot hole along the entire alignment, comes out, surfaces at the other end, has a drill bit change, pulls back a reamer, and does that several times to enlarge the hole to become large enough to then subsequently pull the assembled pipe through the hill. And throughout this entire process, the hole is being kept open and lubricated with a bentonite slurry mix, which helps to keep the hole open and also helps to lubricate the passage of the pipe once it's pulled through the hill. Next slide, please. So following up on the selection of the conveyance solution in April, the Commission approved the project implementation strategy, which included the decision to deliver the project in 2 contracts and following a schedule that I've summarized in my last slide. So in a nutshell, the decision was made to deliver the project in via 2 contracts. So a design build, most of the project will be delivered as a single design build contract. So that's highlighted by the light blue boxes. So that'll be the cut and cover along Dyke Road through the KFN, both horizontal directional drilled tunneled sections, and the pump station upgrades and the tie-in at the plant. So that will all be delivered via design build. Design build is considered kind of a progressive project delivery method in that rather than procuring and working with a single engineering team to develop a detailed 100% design and then going out for tender, hiring a builder who will build it, to the letter of the tender. Instead, a performance-based specification is developed with an owner's engineer, and then that specification is used to procure a team composed of a builder and an engineering firm, and then they work together to develop the detailed design. And this was particularly attractive for this project, just given the complexities of maintaining operation at these pump stations while the major upgrades are underway. We felt that would really benefit from the synergies possible from having a combined team. Whereas the cut and cover section through the town of Comox, highlighted in green, will be delivered via a design bid build approach, which is more traditional and as I just described, involves working directly with an engineering firm to develop the 100% design and then subsequently tendering it and building it. And the rationale here was that that would provide a lot more opportunity to work in close collaboration with the town and the designer to make sure that to facilitate that phase of construction through what is a pretty developed, highly developed urban center. Next slide, please. So now I just want to touch on an update on the groundwater inventory or groundwater work underway. So since we last spoke, we've been able to ascertain the location and depth of most wells in the swath of land where the HDD alignment will pass through. So the inventory continues, and we'll be reaching out very shortly to a handful of residents to discuss installation of real-time groundwater quality and level data monitoring equipment. So the equipment will be left in place from now until well after construction. We plan to have a solid year of data captured prior to construction to establish a baseline against which future readings taken with that monitoring equipment will be measured against to confirm that there aren't any impacts from construction or subsequent operation. Just want to take the opportunity to thank all the residents or all of you who have participated in the groundwater well survey and also acknowledge the concerns of those that have so far not. Over the past months, I've had numerous conversations with residents from across this area and certainly understand that there is a serious concern about the potential impact on groundwater and property values. Next slide, please. So my hope is that as we progress through the project and through this phase this year, we can work to assuage these concerns. partially by highlighting how extremely careful and robust our planning and design for this system will be, has been, and will be. From the planning perspective, which is highlighted or summarized in that illustration at the top of this slide, we've undertaken extensive consultation and started with a really wide scope of analysis. We cast the net far and wide, looking at every possible option that occurred to us, our engineering team, and the technical and public advisory committees that were formed to help govern this process. We also undertook a public consultation in parallel. We were also seeking input from the public. So I think we can say with confidence that we really did capture and start with a long list that included all possible options of how to resolve the environmental risk along Willamar Bluffs and ensure cost-effective service delivery into the future. So that started with 12 options. And then through a process of increasing level of assessments, we worked to shortlist those options, eventually ending up with 2. And those 2 had I guess the most intensive assessments performed on them, from geotechnical, structural, hydraulics, alignments, hydrological, environmental, floodproofing, very in-depth analysis of the various tunneling and trenchless concepts available, which ended up settling on the horizontal directional drilling as the optimum technology in this situation. And then finally, culminating in the value engineering process that we undertook in December, where we pulled together a team of experts from around the continent that had no previous exposure to the project. And they went through a methodical review process of the planning done to date. Aside from several tweaks, really confirmed the technical outcome of the work. So that's from the planning perspective. So from the design end, we just wanted to express confidence. The CDRD has the incentive, the expertise, and the internal capacity to deliver this project and deliver a pipe that is robust and will not leak. Just to highlight, just how robust this pipe system will be. It's required to be designed and built to a seismic standard that will ensure the pipe would survive a 1 in 2,475 year return seismic event. So just to put that in perspective, the 1 in 300 year seismic event that people refer to as the big one around here would be significantly smaller than one that you would expect to see, once in every 2,500 years. The third bullet, the selection of the delivery, the decision to deliver the project via design build was done in part to ensure that we had as many engineering teams as possible providing input to the process, to avoid sometimes the myopia that can come from a single team. And we've already done that through inclusion of the value engineering process, but delivery of the project and design build ensures that you will have multiple teams operating a competitive environment that will be reviewing this scope and looking to improve it. And then finally, that there will be extensive quality control, assurance, and testing processes in place to ensure that that what was designed will be delivered. Next slide, please. So in terms of safety considerations, our work assessing options for leak detection continues. At the moment, the approach that is taking shape is to include access ports at either end of the tunneled sections to allow for insertion of a real-time leak detection system once that technology has advanced sufficiently. And in the meantime, to run the smart ball acoustic detection device through the pipe on a regular basis to listen for leaks. So we've used the smart ball extensively over the past years, both in the sewer system as well as the water conveyance system. And we have a high level of confidence in this technology. It's well demonstrated. It can pick up and triangulate very tiny leaks. In terms of the frequency, I think it would be more frequent likely in the first year or so of operation, say on a quarterly basis, and then likely on a less frequent basis as potentially biannually once the pipe has been operated for a full year and proven itself operationally. As discussed on an earlier slide, groundwater monitoring will continue post-construction, and it will provide a second line of defense, so to speak, for a leak. I'm sure I've clearly conveyed my thoughts on how unlikely I believe a leak from this pipe is, but I understand the concern of residents, and I obviously I acknowledge that that a leak is not impossible. To ensure the CVRD always has the equipment, the expertise, and the processes in place to allow an expedited response to a leak if one were to occur, either now or into the distant future, staff will be developing and bringing forward to the Commission for approval later this year, a policy requiring these preparations and practices to be in place in perpetuity. So that policy would embed that as a requirement for all staff, regardless of turnover. So this piece would form one element of our kind of broader commitment to the Lazo Hill residents, that we will be doing everything possible to design and install a pipe that won't leak, implement a leak detection and monitoring system to ensure that if there is a leak, it's picked up as soon as possible, and then have the equipment and processes in place to ensure an expedited repair, and then finally making good on any impacts to groundwater, which could include provision of temporary water, drilling of new groundwater wells, or even facilitating the installation of a community water system in the area. Next slide, please. So through the multi-year planning process that's brought us to this point, the CVRD has been supported by expert technical, financial, and commercial advisors, including WSP, our engineering consultant, Deloitte, our financial and commercial consultant. And this process has included market sounding processes of key consultants and contractors, and the rigorous value engineering process I mentioned earlier. So through this extensive work and the wealth of knowledge and experience they've brought to the table, we've become very confident in the proposed HDD approach to going through Lazo Hill. At no point in this entire process has any consultant or contractor raised a concern that this approach strays from what's been done successfully elsewhere, or about our ability to deliver a robust pipe solution. I've also been in contact with my counterparts at Metro Vancouver and the Capital Regional District to learn more about their relevant projects, which two of which both run under sensitive marine environment. So the first one, just represented by that photo on the left at the bottom, is was the harbor crossing in Victoria as part of their regional wastewater project. So that was a similar diameter pipe crossing under the harbor from James Bay over to McLaughlin Point treatment plant. So passing underneath a sensitive marine environment. And so that we've been in close contact with the project manager there, and have again, that's increased our confidence in the approach that's selected here. And the other one by Metro Vancouver, just illustrated on the right there, is a side profile view of the crossing that's currently under development and delivery by Metro Vancouver to connect their newly expanded Northwest Langley treatment plant with the communities on the north side of the Fraser River, again underneath a sensitive river receiving environment. So additionally, in acknowledgement of the concerns expressed by residents in March and at previous events, we've initiated a thorough study by WSP of other similar projects. So working together, we identified a long list of 18 projects, and we've shortlisted to 10 of the most relevant projects, which have the most overlap with the project that we're facing here. And we'll be sharing the finished study once it's complete. And I'll be providing an overview of that work at our next open house. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide before the final schedule slide. Just with some details about the statutory right-of-way negotiation process. So over the past 2 months, we've procured and engaged a property agent who will be acting on our behalf as the single point of contact with property owners in the area for the statutory right-of-way negotiations. So Jim Riches is his name, and he has a wealth of experience in this field. And he's already started to assist us in drafting the statutory right-of-way agreement that will form the basis or the starting point for negotiations with the property owners. So once the owner's engineers are on board in early summer and they've finalized the HDD alignment, so in the late summer, early fall, Jim will be reaching out to property owners to begin the negotiations. And we probably expect that to be in early November. And we're hoping to finalize those statutory right-of-way negotiations in about 3 months, or by February of 2022. And final slide, please. So this is a high-level schedule summary with some of the the key pieces of relevance to the Lazo Hill pulled out. So the first one, just to walk through in summary. So the groundwater survey and monitoring is ongoing and will carry through into post-construction. The second item there, the alternative approval process that Russell touched on in his intro. So that's the authorization for the borrowing required for the project. So that's that'll be underway starting in early June and ending in early July, hopefully with the approval to initiate the borrowing for the project. Third one, the planning and preliminary design assessment. So that's underway. And we'll be really pick up the pace once the owner's engineers are on board towards the end of June, and then culminating with finalization of the project scope, including the HDD alignment in the mid fall. We're planning a follow-up neighborhood meeting, so the next in this series, likely in September. So yeah, finalizing project scope in November. And then undertaking the statutory right-of-way negotiations between November and February 2022. And all of that lining us up for initiation of procurement in the spring of 2022, with construction starting in early 2023 and taking about 18 months, so culminating or ending in late 2024. So yeah, a lot of information. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to stop the screen share there. We've had some good questions coming in through the chat. And in fact, I think I might start with a question about the alternate approval process. I know we've got Russell here with us, Russell Dyson, and we did have some questions about that yesterday in terms of Area B residents. So I'll just go right back to the top there. Yeah, I think it was, yes, exactly. That was our first question. How does the alternate approval process work? And just asking about for those in Area B, if they can take part. I'll let you, over to you, Russell.
Thank you very much. An alternate approval process is required to approve the borrowing in order to undertake the project. Because the project has such a significant cost, the Sewage Commission does not have the funds available to pay for it. When the Sewage Commission needs to borrow monies for the long term, over 5 years, they need to get approval from those that are affected by those costs. There's 3 ways that they could get that approval. An alternate approval process is where we advertise and promote the project and its implications. If people are opposed, they sign a form and submit that to the regional district. If more than 10% of the people that qualify that would otherwise be paying for this project fill out one of those forms, then the Sewage Commission could not proceed unless they went to referendum or another means. A referendum is another alternative to the alternate approval process. I think you understand a referendum. The final means, the third means, would be to get the liquid waste management plan that is in midst approved by the province. That then gives authority for the components of that plan to proceed, even when they require extensive borrowing. So this isn't the alternative approval process, is the approval of borrowing. The Sewage Commission has been able to undertake many works that have not required borrowing. Those include the Greenwood and Hudson Trunk, and a multi-million-dollar project to improve odor control at the sewage treatment plant this year. Because it is only the residents of the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox that will be paying for the project, you have to be an approved elector within those two municipalities in order to qualify to participate in the alternative approval process. It is possible that you may, if you own land or other means. It's best to check with us to see if you would be an approved elector to participate in the AAP process.
Great. I think I know at the end of today, we'll be putting up an email. If you did want to check in on your location, you could send through to the CVRD. I'm going to keep going along with questions. Chris, we have a question about, do we know which properties will the tunneling go through, and what will the impact be potentially on property values?
So currently we don't know exactly which properties the alignment will go under, which is why we've taken the approach of communicating that swath of land highlighted in orange. So as we walk through the summer, get our owners engineers on board, one of their first priorities will be to put their minds and work with the relevant internal and external experts to nail down that alignment, to figure out exactly which properties will be going under. And that will be the key information and milestone required for us to initiate that statutory right-of-way negotiation. So there's between 30 and 40 properties in the swath, but only around 12 to 15 properties will be directly over top of the pipe. So the purpose of the SRW negotiations will be to agree on the terms of the statutory right-of-way agreement between the CVRD and each property owner. And so yeah, the pipe will vary in depth between say between 5 to 8 meters as a minimum under private property to upwards of 30, 35 meters right at the peak of the hill. So in terms of construction impacts, the alignment will be selected to be as far as possible from existing groundwater wells. And one of the other key pieces of assessment that will be concluded by our owner's engineer team will be just to determine what that minimum distance should be from existing wells. And that's to avoid the potential for construction impacts. When I was speaking of the HDD installation methodology, I spoke about the bentonite clay slurry that's used as the drilling fluid. And so it is pressurized in the hole to keep it open and to make sure that it's traveling along the entire length. And one of the implications of that is that it can kind of, if it finds cracks in the surrounding soil, it can travel a little ways. So if there is a drinking water well too close, there is the small potential for bentonite clay to make its way over to the drinking water well. So we want to set a minimum distance that's far in excess of what how bentonite can travel through the ground. So we'll be, again, maximizing the distance from existing wells. So other than that, in terms of impacts, residents in the area, other than driving by the exit or the entry pit at the corner of Lazo and Torrance, they won't really notice much. You won't be noticing vibrations or anything like that, because it'll be so far below the property. And then in terms of what rights will be restricted, and as summarized in the statutory right-of-way agreement, we're looking at certainly there will be the agreement will preclude you from being able to drill a new well directly over top of the pipe and within some distance from it, just to ensure that that the pipe isn't inadvertently punctured by somebody drilling a drinking water well. So that would be one of the constraints. And then otherwise, it will be just a commitment, acknowledgement that in the extremely unlikely event of a leak and a repair being needed, that the RD has the ability to come onto the property and undertake the necessary repairs, with full compensation for any impacts to property. So that's in a nutshell what the SRW will be addressing.
Okay, I think I hope that answers the question there. We can always loop back on that if anyone wants to expand or go deeper on that. Quite a few questions about leaks. Just wondering, if leaks are inevitable, would there be a possibility to hook everyone in Area B to municipal water now? And wondering if residents affected by a leak would obtain free water. And we've got some more, but let's start with those two. Chris, if you can speak to those.
Sure. So I hope I haven't given the impression that leaks are inevitable. I tried to express very much the opposite, that just given the robustness of the pipe that we will be installing, I think a leak over the life cycle of the pipe is extremely unlikely. So a proactive approach to providing community water to the area is not in the cards. Certainly, I mentioned that as if in the event of a leak, if the CVRD is committed to making good on any impacts up to and including installing a community water system, but that is certainly not what we're planning for. We have every incentive to ensure that this pipe is installed and maintains its integrity throughout its life. This will be, after all, this will be the sole means of conveyance for the vast majority of wastewater from Courtenay and Comox to the plant. And so we need this pipe to maintain its integrity. So I think that's that question. Was there a second part to that, Marcy?
A suggestion that if their residents are affected by a leak, will they get free water?
Well, certainly that the policy that I referenced, which will embed the approaches being taken internally and the commitments by the CVRD, certainly making a commitment to make good on any impacts to drinking water, up to and including provision of community water. What exactly that would look like at this point, it's hard to describe. But certainly, any residents affected by a leak would certainly have the CVRD would ensure continued healthy drinking water supply, and if that requires provision of water from another source, either another groundwater well drilled at another location or from a community water source, then that would be on us.
Okay, that's and that's my mistake. The question was, will there be assurance in writing to guarantee that kind of provision of water? And what I'm hearing you say, Chris, is an assurance that water would be provided. Do you want to expand on that? Yeah.
I think our intention is so I've referenced that the policy under development, just dealing, explicitly laying out our obligations and commitments with respect to ensuring the integrity, working to ensure the integrity of the pipe, but also ensuring, that all the necessary preparations and processes, equipment would be in place to expedite a repair, and then that final piece that we would be embedding that commitment to make good on any impacts should a leak occur. So that will be embedded in the policy that's under development in writing.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for spending a bit of extra time on that. A question about the two HDD examples. They are recent or under development. Is this too early to say how successful the technology is?
So as I've highlighted, those are two recent examples that were already evident to us. But we have taken this additional significant step of working with WSP to look farther and wider for projects that are more directly relevant to this one, and that includes one of the criteria is that they have been completed and under operation for a longer period of time to be able to draw more more firm conclusions from. So yeah, agreed that that both of the projects referenced are recent, and we are keen to include projects that have been around for longer, of which there are many. HDD has been used as a technology for decades. This is not a cutting edge technology.
Okay. Question about the groundwater monitoring. Where is this going to be happening?
So the well inventory. So we've been focused on a precise location and depth measurements from each of the wells within the swath of land. So that's one piece. In parallel with that, or kind of working with the information that's been gleaned through that and the contacts or the relationships developed with the residents as part of that process, we're working with GW Solutions, our hydrological consultant, to select a handful of those for installation of the groundwater monitoring equipment. So that obviously that would be purely voluntary on the part of the property owners. And we'd be looking to get a kind of good spatial distribution of the wells throughout the area to serve those purposes of establishing that baseline and providing effective monitoring during and after construction.
Okay, great. Question about the leak detection technology. If it's not advanced enough to detect leaks, will the project be delayed? Interesting hypothetical situation. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I highlighted was that that real-time monitoring is the technology is nascent at this point, but there is very robust technology like the one that we're proposing to use, which is the smart ball acoustic leak detection technology. That's very well established. It's been used in most jurisdictions around the continent, and it's extremely effective at detecting even the smallest pinhole leaks, which all make a very clear acoustic signature. Yeah, so I sorry if I gave that impression. The technology is definitely there. It's just a real-time component that we'd like to get to, but that is not, like I said, is nascent at this time. But our approach there would be to provide the entry and exit ports required for installation of that technology when it does become available.
Okay, maybe we'll stay on leaks just for a minute, another second here, Chris, just around situation. So if there were a leak under Lazo Hill, you would need to dig a pit over 100 feet across to access the pipe safely because of the depth. Is that correct? So it's sort of a presenting a situation and asking if that would be the case.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we've actually just completed construction of our raw water pump station on the lake, on the shore of Comox Lake, and so the technology used to dig the wet well on that infrastructure would be similar to how a repair would be executed here. So, and it's one that avoids a very big excavation, and so that excavation there is about 10 meters across and 12 meters deep. So the one that would be required for repair of a pipe at the depth, the highest point of land, the deepest section of pipe, which would be about 100 feet. So it'd be, roughly double that depth, similar diameter. And it's done using piles to, so the piles are done in a circular pattern overlapping to provide a robust circular concrete wall. And then that center is excavated out. And so that would be done over top of the section of pipe. The acoustic leak detection would provide triangulation of exactly where that leak is. That circular caisson would be installed directly over top of that, down to just above the pipe. And then the center would be excavated out using a combination of clamshell and excavators. So that would definitely minimize the impact on the land above. But obviously would have a significant impact depending on where that leak were to occur. So certainly there will be strong language within the statutory right-of-way agreement that in that very unlikely event that does occur, that the CVRD obviously would be on the hook for full restoration costs to any property impacts.
Thanks, Chris. I'm seeing some comments in the chat, not so much questions, but a level of frustration around the format today. And I know Russell is with us and may like to address some of that frustration. I think this would be a good opportunity. We do have time, and then we'll go back to questions as well.
Thank you very much, Marcy, and thank you for the concerns being expressed. And that's the importance of these formats and us hearing from you. Yes, doing it by Zoom is not perfect. A lot of people would rather we do this face-to-face, have an open meeting and such, and we certainly agree with that. Having said that, there are some advantages to what we're doing today. Unlike an open house where it's kind of a one-on-one conversation with the public, the benefit of Zoom is all the questions are shared with all of you. All of our responses are shared with all of you. And then there's a record of this that we can put on of all those questions or otherwise that go on the internet, so others in the community can get it. This is all about you. It's all about us working with you to resolve your concerns. And I want to express an example of that. We mentioned that we've had previous open houses or workshops with you, and one of the concerns we heard loud and clear was your concerns about leaks. And it was because of that we got together as a team and said, this is not good enough for us just to answer the questions or otherwise, or say that they can be dealt with. We are proposing that the Sewage Commission adopt now the policy and the procedures in the event of a leak to ensure that if you were to be affected of this, and it is very remote, and having said it's very remote, there are many jurisdictions that would say it is so remote we're not going to worry about it. But unlike that, we're living up to this and we're addressing it head on with you. So our intent is that the Sewage Commission will adopt a policy and procedure now. They will have us put in place all the mechanisms and means by which we can then, in the event of a leak, rectify the situation and ensure that you, the resident, if you're affected by that leak, continue to have water, clean, clear water, that you can continue to have the full use and capacity of your home, and that we look at a long-term solution. In the late 1980s, I stood on the banks of the Willamar Bluff with Melda Buchanan, and I heard her story about what happened when the conveyance line was first put in place. I think we've come a long way during those days, and we've learned from people like Melda and their concerns. We're engaging with you in the public in these forums because it's important to us. It's important that we hear your concerns and that we try and address them. And it's important because in the conveyance of the Willamar Bluffs, they never had the contingency plan. It wasn't until these last few years that Chris and his team have put together the contingency plan so that Mike Emery and his leaders and his leadership can respond to an emergency, where we now have in place all the equipment necessary to respond to a leak in the Willamar Bluff. That wasn't done in day one, but that's how we manage this project and how we want to move forward. And that's how we respond to the concerns that we hear through these workshops. So while I respect your opinion that you may not agree with this, I just want to assure you that we do hear you. We are trying our best to address your concerns as much as possible, and we're dealing with these issues head on. So thank you for your time and your input.
I will pop up the email to directly speak to the project team. But before that, there is a question here I want to get to quickly, which is, will the intersection of Lazo and Torrance be closed during construction?
There will be a lot of work happening near and around that intersection. I suspect that at times during construction we may go down to single lane traffic in that area, but I do not expect to have any full interruption of traffic through that intersection.
Okay, great. And an easy one, the estimated length of the drilled pipe.
So there's so as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are looking at a couple or several different options still for the alignment. The longest kind of the scenario that would have the longest section of pipe is the one that would have a single alignment or single section of tunnel from Torrance and Lazo area directly to the plant, and that's about 1.7 kilometers. if we go with the other option of having a shorter section to Moreland, and then another one underneath the marsh. That one's closer to 1.3 kilometers.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Sorry, was there more there? No, okay, didn't mean to cut you off. We're seeing some comments in the chat. I'm going to try and stick to the questions in this last few moments that we have, but I will also put up that email very soon. A question about the policy around the safe drinking water. Would that policy be available for public scrutiny, or I guess public review? And there, Russell might want to take this one. So a lot of interest around the drinking water, safe drinking water. Let's try and get through that.
Sure, yeah,
Chris?
I mean, certainly the policy, yeah, the policy will definitely be publicly available. It'll be brought forward in public through the commission and approved in the public sphere. If the question is whether there'll be input from the public before that's approved, we haven't kind of laid out what that process, exactly what that process looks like. But I could certainly see an opportunity for some input from the Lazo neighborhood in the contents of that policy.
Okay, we'll go back to some details around the test well sites. The test well sites that were drilled on Moreland Road and elsewhere, are they now sealed, or can they be used to monitor as part of the to monitor the water quality of the area?
So some of those test wells were sealed. Others were left available for monitoring. So I don't think we have plans to install a continuous monitoring equipment on any of those. But I could be wrong on that. But I do know that a handful of those were left open to maintain our ability to sample from them. But the continuous monitoring equipment that we've kind of touched on several times during the virtual open house, those will be on private land only.
Okay, great. I see participants sticking around, so let's there is interest in the policy related to the drinking water. A specific question about when it might be available. I'm not sure if we have dates, but I'll ask. And this is a chance for me to put up the email as well for feedback, questions, comments. The bottom right there, communications@comoxvalleyRD.ca. Whereas with other webinars, we had been, the call to action was a survey, that type of feedback. This is information sharing. But if you do have questions or want to dive deeper into any of the topics, that is the email there to use. So please jot that down if you want to. We've got a few minutes still on some of the questions that are coming through. Policy. Oh, Chris, yes. And Chris, you may want to turn your video off. I notice it freezing. That might just be at my end, but your audio is great. In fact, you're fine now, so totally up to you. But if you did have some timing about that, the drinking water policy, that was the question. And still people asking around, if there is a leak, does the system just get shut down? So timing for that policy to take a look at, I'm assuming, and then just some more specifics around if there is a leak, can it be shut down quickly, or does it keep leaking until it's found and repaired?
Okay. Sure, yeah, so in terms of timing for the policy, we haven't actually, like I said, we haven't developed our approach or our timeline for this, but I would expect that we would be bringing forward we're prepared to bring forward a draft policy in the late summer or early fall to help feed into and be in place to be providing some assurance in advance of or early on in the statutory right-of-way negotiation process. And as far as I guess the question is highlighting the fact that regarding what if there's a leak. Is highlighting the fact that there likely won't be any redundancy on this pipe, which just highlights, that goes back to me highlighting the incentive, the extremely strong incentive for the sewer service to deliver this project, to deliver a pipe that that will not leak, because as is our current situation, and as is the situation in so many other communities with large conveyance of this sort, often to plants that are outside of town, so quite distant. Having redundancy for a large line like this is a luxury that is not afforded to most, almost all small communities. So in the event of a leak, that frequency of the leak detection, in combination with the monitoring of the groundwater, that will allow us to pick up on the presence of a leak as quickly as possible, and having that policy in place that governs, requires us to have all of the equipment and processes in place to expedite repair. That's why we're proposing to put that in place, to allow us to repair it as quickly as possible. So in past virtual open houses, we've had Gilles Wending from GW Solutions here, just talking about the fact that the distance between the pipe and the top of the groundwater, we're looking at between a 10 to 12 minimum distance between the pipe and that groundwater, and highly compacted sand in between. So according to Gilles and their work, if a leak did materialize under that highly pressurized environment, that it would take weeks or months to migrate down into the groundwater, and even then would take time to travel, and along the way would be treated to a certain extent by passage through the ground, very much like each one of the property owners on the call today, very much like how their on-site treatment systems treat their own wastewater, right, with sand beds, and with that minimum distance that's regulated by law between their septic distribution system and the top of the groundwater. It's because ground does provide treatment capacity. So all that to say, in direct answer to the question, it will take some time to repair the pipe. In the interim, the pipe would remain in operation, but we would have everything in place to allow a repair to be executed as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. There's some more questions about storage, if there's storage in the line, or if the leak simply keeps leaking. I'm going to pop up as we're getting close to the end here. As you do your answer, Chris, I'm actually going to share again the timeline. We have shared the email address. I think this slide, which was your final slide, might be helpful here to view while you're answering the question about storage in the line as it relates to leaks. As I see some people moving on towards their dinner hour, but Chris, if you have time for that question, and I'll hold this slide up here for people to just take another look at what's coming next after this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Marcy. So yeah, so very much in line with my previous response. I mean, there is no storage, so to speak, in the system that could avoid or kind of allow for reduced flow through that pipe in the event of a leak. Our pump stations currently have about 20 or 30 minutes of storage, which obviously would not last the weeks or month or two that a repair would take. I think I saw a comment come through from somebody in the chat section there, suggesting that a repair could take years, but that's just simply not the case, particularly given the commitments that we plan to embed in that policy that would require us to be extremely prepared to undertake a repair. That could be executed in a matter of weeks or a couple months at the outside.
Thank you, Chris, for expanding on that. I hope the timeline was helpful for those of you. I see our numbers people are heading off to dinner, it looks like. I think we have time. If anyone hasn't asked a question who would like to chime in now, feel free. This would be the moment to do so. And I will go back once more again to the email. Oh, that's not the email we want, but I will go back to the email. I'm sure you've all noted it already. Communications at Here we go. We usually end on this slide. So I hope that's helpful. There's the email again. I am seeing that. Okay, we've got time for one more, Chris. If you've got time for one more, contamination, how is contamination removed from the aquifer? And I think we'll wrap it after that if people are wanting to jump off. But if you could, I don't know if that's something you can answer quickly or if you want to answer quickly, but it's there if you have a minute to just speak to that.
Sure. I think the intent of the question is to highlight that the perception that if in that extremely unlikely event that a leak were to occur and wastewater were to get into the aquifer, that thought that that it could be permanently contaminated. I think what we've heard very clearly from Gilles, as I mentioned, that previous presentation that he provided, which we could certainly bring back and ask him to elaborate on at the next open house. I think that would be a good idea. But what he highlighted is that is just a very slow movement of water through the aquifer, the inherent treatment ability of the ground, particularly that highly dense sand, and not just mechanically filtering out the particles, but also the chemical processes that are occurring as the water passes through the micropores between these between the substrate. That over time that would become treated, and but certainly that's theoretical. That would be theoretical at this point, and would be if in that event of a leak would be confirmed and monitored and demonstrated through extensive field and study work in close consultation with the public, and that would form that will be embedded in that policy to just explain what as part of that response, what that response would look like in the event of a leak, to end up in a situation where the residents are satisfied with whatever long-term solution for water, as Russell had mentioned.
Thank you, Chris, for diving in there at the end on that one. And I wanted to just, it is probably time to wrap. We will be posting this recording on the CBRD website on behalf of the Comox Valley Regional District. Thank you, all of you who joined us today with your views, comments, concerns, and questions. And of course, Chris, thank you for sharing all of that information. We look forward to posting this online alongside the webinar from yesterday. Same content, a lot of the same questions, but another valuable information webinar on this topic. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your evening, afternoon for this, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Stay well. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Marcy.